we're here. Hi everyone, I'm Andrea from Admire PR, and today I am with Ensuque, who is a wonderful coach, and she's going to tell us all about herself and her business journey to where she is now. Michelle, welcome to our little chat today. Introduce yourself, tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Oh my God, where do I start? So, yeah, Michelle Ensuque. I guess my career spans music. I used to be a professional musician. I went to the Air Force, so I spent 16 years in the military. I popped out the conveyor belt of the military and went into design consultancy. I've done a stint in construction. And then I kind of went self-employed, and I've now ended up as partly consultant, because I still work with companies in a project management context, but also as a coach. And that was born out of just going on a very personal journey, I think, in being in that corporate space, in that kind of environment where you drive yourself really hard. And I had life events along the way, and bereavement and divorce and two little adorable, sometimes children to parent in that space, and then I had a breakdown, and I was kind of like, bugger, I never saw that coming. Actually, I was a bit I always saw myself as a strong individual, and then I had to work really hard for a year to recover from that. And I discovered through that journey a form of coaching called NLP, neuro linguistic programming. And I'm very careful, kind of like, not to say, oh, NLP is just so fantastic and you all need to go out and try it, because it's one of those things where I think it's not a one size fits all. There are lots of different things out there, but for me it was just very transformational, and I just decided to investigate a little bit more about that space and retrain in NLP, and now I tend to use that as a basis of my coaching. So yeah, I love it.
What a great journey. Okay, so what instrument did you play when you were a musician?
Flute and piano.
Oh, they're
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
But of course, it was at a time when James Galway was on the scene, for those that can remember the man with the golden flute. And he absolutely annihilated it for the rest of us who didn't have a golden flute, who maybe weren't quite as talented. But of course, the numbers of people that were flautists suddenly shot up in their thousands. So the competition was massive. But there you go. It was an experience.
I bet. So, you said, you had a breakdown.
Yeah.
It's common, right?
Yeah.
We meet a lot of people. And then you said those words, I didn't see it coming.
No.
Now, that I know is common as well. And we've talked about this, that point of people not seeing it coming. But now you look back, could you have seen that?
Oh my God, yes. Well, now it's like I've got those lenses on where I go, oh my God, you could see that coming like 5 years previously or 10 years previously. Why didn't you recognize that? And I think, and I was struck by something I saw on LinkedIn the other day from somebody in the, it was answering a question, and they said, oh yes, I've suffered that within the military, and understand how difficult it is to talk about it in that space. And I guess, look, my upbringing was very disciplined. I went into an environment that was very disciplined, and that felt comfortable to me because I was used to that space. But also in that space is you learn not necessarily to talk about those things, and even a bit of, whilst the Air Force was fantastic for preparing you for soft skills conversations, it was normally with other people. So not really reflecting on yourself and what might drive you to certain behaviors and why you might be doing certain things. And I think I just got very used from a young age to coping with life events or issues, compartmentalizing them, pretending they didn't exist at all, put the lid on the box, park the box, move on, and go, fantastic, I've coped with that really well, look at me. Until I got to a stage where my body and mind kind of went, do you know what, this ain't gonna happen anymore, you've got to stop, young lady.
Yeah. And so looking back at those, that you said you could have, knowing what you know now, 5 years before your breakdown, what were those little things that started to happen? What were those small signs?
Right. So I guess getting divorced was pretty final in that space of I had to stand up and look after myself and my two boys. I saw that as my responsibility, really. Now, don't get me wrong, I'd chosen to get divorced.
Yeah.
This wasn't something that was inflicted upon me, but I very much kind of then went on with the mantra, okay, I have to provide a house. I have to find a job. I have to provide money. I have to put money on the, food on the table. And my behaviors were driving me to work hard. Then I went into a space, I think, where I was and don't get me wrong here, Mott MacDonald, absolutely fantastic company to work for. None of this was inflicted by them. These were my own drivers and behaviors where I drove
Sure.
myself.
Yeah.
If I'd voiced any of my concerns, they would have been the first to support me, but I didn't talk about it.
No.
So I was probably working, not all the time, but at certain periods, 50, 60 plus hours a week. That was not an expectation of people around me. That was my self expectation of what I needed to do to keep a job, to feed the
Sure.
kids, to keep the security. So I think looking back now, I would have probably asked myself some questions around, do you really need to be doing this? Yeah,
Yeah.
what are your priorities? Is there a different way of doing this? What help can you ask for? I was crap at asking for help.
Yeah.
It was just like that would stick in my throat. I'd be like, no, 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 I have to do this all by myself. And it's taken me a fair few years to kind of learn that actually asking for help is as nice for other people to know that they're helping you out and the feel good feeling that gives them, as well as me kind of going, oh, whew, something is off my slot jet.
Yeah. It's I find this, it's quite, I automatically think that I'm burdening someone if
Yeah,
I'm asking them to help. I think that's really common,
yeah,
isn't it? Like,
yeah.
and I'm kind of learning, I think, to ask for help.
Well,
I'm
we
on,
think we're putting people out, don't we? And actually, I
yeah.
think I was coaching somebody once and I said, well, imagine somebody asks you for help. What goes through your brain? And she went, oh, that's really nice. She said, I feel that I'm kind of helping them and it gives me a real positive action to do. And it's really great to know that I can help them in that space. And I said, okay, so what's the difference then between you giving that help and then you asking that help from somebody else? And they just went, uh,
Uh,
and the penny
yeah,
dropped. It was just like their
yeah,
friends would be more than happy to help them. They just didn't want to ask.
yeah, yeah. It makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. And this, so we've talked about, catching people before the breakdown.
Yeah,
Like if you knew what you know now, and you had somebody to help you, and you'd opened up, you wouldn't have gone through what you
no,
went through.
no,
So what can people do? So quite often it's like a family or a member or a friend who will notice something. Somebody else will notice something about you before you notice yourself, like quite often. So what can people do in that first instance if they think like, oh, do you know what, I don't know what's quite going on with my mate here, there's something they're not talking about, or
it's very difficult, isn't it? Because I think when you go into that space of asking those questions, unless the person's ready and they're receptive, they go quite defensive.
yeah,
So there's something in that space about how do you make a conversation land that it doesn't raise the hackles of somebody else.
yeah,
And
yeah,
actually, kind of what I learned through the NLP route is about curiosity. Now, I never used to be really curious about people, which sounds bad, doesn't it? But I always thought I was the most empathetic person. But was I really curious, or was I just asking them questions because it helped me in terms of what I was trying to achieve? Don't know.
mm,
Whereas now I work really hard to understand more about what is behind the face, what issues people bring with them, how their brains tick, what is making the behave in certain aspects. So I guess if I was faced with somebody, and I've kind of done this recently, I think with a friend of mine, I use the word I noticed that. I noticed that you seem to be very busy. I noticed that you don't seem to have much rest. What's the reason for that? And then I let the space just sit and they answer the question, rather than we usually go into, why are you always so busy? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And immediately you go, why? Everyone's going, well, is that wrong? You know, it's just my self-defense kind of thing kicks in. So it's about, I think, being more gentle in that space and eliciting some answers from them, as opposed to going, why, and putting them in defense mode.
Yeah, that's really helpful. It's like providing that space for someone, isn't it? And I'm the same. I would immediately immediately get defensive. So that's really helpful. And so what's next for you, Michelle? What are you looking forward to over the next sort of 6 months to a year? What have you got going on?
So at the moment, I'm still doing consultancy work with EDF, and who knows where that might take me kind of like after Christmas, because I must admit, I do like the balance of bringing the coaching into the work environment as well as purely one-to-one coaching. I've got some things lined up. Interestingly, what I've learned along my experience is this isn't just like one thing. It's not necessarily about, how can I explain it? It's not necessarily about me waving a flag and wearing a badge of honor and going, I've had a breakdown. You can all learn from my experience. It's not, it really isn't about that. It's just like, that's one facet. But if I know anything now, we are a makeup of where we've come from as children. Okay. So all of those formed behaviors when I was young, I had no idea how they impacted on my future. Now, some of that is learned behaviors from parents, some of that is experiences, some of that, quite frankly, is down to hormones and the whole subject around menopause. And if I look back around when I was suffering in that space, maybe perimenopause and menopause might have come to play in that as well. So part of the work that I'm doing is teaming up with a lady who specializes in that area, and just having a open conversation, some videos in that space of trying to raise that awareness, because I didn't even start talking about that stuff until I was 50. So, and I'm just like, you know, for goodness sake, you know, we should have come on a bit since they're really. Now, maybe the youngsters do talk about it more. I don't know. I've got 2 boys, so I can't really ask that question. You know, do you talk about menopause, guys? I don't know. It's not really out there in the topic. So I think for me, it's looking at what could we do holistically, and who could I talk to in that space that makes us understand a little bit more about the different things that we can do and the different practices that are out there for everybody, so that it doesn't just become a story about me going, NLP is the answer for, you know, solving world peace. It's really not about that. And I think going forwards, it's just one subject that really fascinates me is, are we born resilient, or do we become resilient? I've seen a lot of articles about it, and they don't really they say at the end of it, it's just like, well, we don't really know. We're doing research in this area, but we don't really know. And you've got examples of people that have had fantastic upbringings with very supportive parents who have gone on to be very successful. And you've got people who've come from great adversity who've also become very successful. And equally, those people from very similar backgrounds who have crashed and burned and not been very successful. But there doesn't seem to be that same analogy that you can put across everything. So I do think it's interesting.
That is interesting. Michelle, I know we could speak all day, like easily. It's fascinating. Well, thank you for popping along.
Thank you.
I will share all your contact details with the video, and we'll look forward to what you do next.
Thank you.